Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this week's Turning Towards Life. This is Lizzie and Justin. We are Turning Towards Life, and this is a Thirdspace project. If you want to find out more about our work more broadly, you can go to wearethirdSpace.org. And we are here for the, 100 and something week, 200 and something week, maybe.
149th.
149th week of our lives that we've done this for continuously, apart from a couple of pre-records for births and things. And it's extraordinary that we're still here. So we are keeping on, and it's a wonder that we keep finding these wonderful sources to talk about. And if you are new to us and coming here and joining us, you will learn that our format is to have a source, something that either Justin or I writes or finds or is reflecting on ourselves in our lives, and we bring that as the beginning piece of the podcast, the broadcast, so that we have a jumping off point for a conversation. It sends us in a particular direction, and then we see what comes of it. So this is not something that's a planned conversation. We're going to read this together and then see what emerges between us. And so we're so grateful for the pieces of the conversation that you join in with as well. So on the Facebook page, the live Facebook broadcast, there is a way that you can comment on things and you can join in the conversation and talk to other people too. So if you're listening on the podcast, you might want to come over to the live Facebook page if that feels interesting to you. And you can message us and talk to us as well. We don't respond to comments as they're happening because we're in the conversation, and we wouldn't want to be distracted from it with everything else trying to come in from the side. But we are absolutely going to read every time we come off here. We at some point read all the comments and start commenting back if there's something to be said or whatever. So we're really grateful that everyone does that, and also grateful if you're just listening too. You might just be listening to the audio, you might be watching a video on YouTube, and we're just very glad that you're here. It means a lot to us that we do this just simply just being here ourselves, but it's also very meaningful that you're here too and that you join with us in this. And every week Justin or I find that someone else is listening or watching that we didn't know about, and there's a surprise, like an old client or a friend or a family member or somebody that we know. And so the word is spreading, which is really beautiful. And we're really glad to be here and to be in this kind of practice that we've set up for all of us is quite a wonder. So thank you, everybody. And we're going to begin with this source from Justin. Maybe, Justin, you want to say hi as well, though?
I do. Hi, everyone. I really enjoyed listening to your introduction to all of this, Lizzie. It's a while since we've spelt it all out from end to end, so that if you're listening, you can know how this works. If you do want to find your way to the Facebook group, you can just search for Turning Towards Life on Facebook and make a request, and we will gladly let you into the private group, so that when people are writing to one another, it's not showing up in public. And we also have a lovely website called turningtowards.life, which is where all the videos are stored. So you might be watching this there as well. Anyway, Lizzie, I'm really glad to be doing this again today. And I'm going to read our source this morning, which I have chosen. I just need to find it. It's from a book I've been reading by Bradley Shovit-Artson. And of course, I'll say a little bit more later, but there's one line in this piece that touched me so deeply and was so liberating that I wanted to be able to bring it to us. And it's called Mortality is the gift the living give to the future. The wonder of life, awesome and terrible, is that it renews itself constantly by sloughing off the old and embracing the new. Just as we thrill that babies, infants, and children refuse to do things the way they have always been done, bringing a relentless energy to their lives and to ours, so too we know that what is old breaks down and gives way before the young. life in this cascading process of endless renewal splashes across the millennia towards greater diversity, experience, relationship, and connection. Human beings, like all living creatures, are events. Moment by moment, we shift and change and move with time, created anew each moment. We may be dying, but we are not yet dead. In that sense, mortality is the gift the living give to the future. Awareness that we are dying should serve to focus our attention on living. It should make what is unimportant less important. We do not have time to waste, not on people we do not enjoy being with, not on activities that are not compelling, necessary, or worthy. The time is brief. Because we are all under the same sentence, it ought to be easier to forgive each other. The one who has wronged us is not some all-powerful divinity who will outlast the ages, but, like each of us, a brief and ephemeral flash of life in a sea of roiling sameness. We ought to know that our identities are not simply that of solitary individual beings. We're part of something larger than ourselves. We're always in relationship, a component of that living organism called humanity, which itself is a component of the biosphere as a whole. Everything is a manifestation of becoming in relationship.
I'm going to read the last half again. Awareness that we are dying should serve to focus our attention on living. It should make what is unimportant less important. We do not have time to waste, not on people we do not enjoy being with, not on activities that are not compelling, necessary, or worthy. That time is brief. Because we are all under the same sentence, it ought to be easier to forgive each other. The one who has wronged us is not some all-powerful divinity who will outlast the ages, but, like each of us, a brief and ephemeral flash of life in a sea of roiling sameness. A brief and ephemeral flash of life in a sea of roiling sameness. We ought to know that our identities are not simply that of solitary individual beings. We are part of something larger than ourselves. We are always in relationship, a component of that living organism called humanity, which itself is a component of the biosphere as a whole. Everything is a manifestation of becoming in relationship. Everything is a manifestation of becoming in relationship.
There's two places, Lizzie, that I feel moved to start with this, two places at the same time. So one is in this line that you read right at the very end, in which Bradley Artson, I think, makes this amazing and really important double claim at the same time. So one is, we're always changing all the time. And I think that's so hard for us to see often, and sometimes painful for us to see. Like I was looking at my oldest son, Noam, yesterday, who's 19 and will be 20. And I could feel the part of me that really, really delights in seeing him becoming a young man, but also that really mourns for the 4-year-old that won't be again, and the 6-year-old that won't be again, and the 12-year-old that won't be again. And the part of me that really mourns for those is the part, of course, there's genuine mourning, right? Because that's gone. But there's also a part of me that really wants to fight against things changing, that imagines that somehow I could hold on, like somehow it would be possible to hold on to that, or to hold on to myself being 10 years younger or 20 years younger, or being a child again. I was thinking about yesterday what it was like to be 6 or 7, and I had a glimpse of that, the bodily feeling just for a moment of what it was like to be those ages. And I feel so different now. My life feels so different in so many different ways. And I could feel the grief in it. And I recognize that the grief is completely legitimate and important because there's loss in it. But that also there's part of me that wants to rail against, why do things have to change? Why do I have to grow older? Why do the people I love have to grow older? Why do all of this happening? And so to be reminded that everything is a kind of becoming, that the only way that everything can be, the only way that it's possible for anything to be, is to allow things to do the work of becoming whatever they're going to become. That if we tried to hold on to it the way that it was, nothing would be possible. It's only because of that, for example, that you and I can sit here and be in this conversation. It's only because time happens. It's only because things pass and we change. So among many things in this piece, the parts that I find so helpful are, yes, can I remember that? Can I remember that everything is becoming all the time, including me? Can I remember that it only happens in relationship, that we're all in this together? Because I think part of the suffering that's possible to get into is somehow imagining this is only happening to me. I'm the only one who is having to deal with all of this change and all of this loss. It's really easy to believe that. But the thing that brought me into this piece is actually the line that I picked as the title. It's not actually because this is part of a chapter of a book. Mortality is the gift the living give to the future.
Yeah.
And I could feel when I read that the self-centered parts of my own grief and my own fear kind of gave way, because I could see that all of the changes and all of the losses and ultimately the end of my life and all of our lives is the necessary gift that we give so that there can be life at all. If this didn't happen, if this hadn't have happened all the way through the history of life, we wouldn't be here. We'd all still be single-celled amoeba-like things at the dawn of time, except time would have gone past. So to think of our changing and our undoing and also all the endings that are in it as a gift, I just finding an extraordinary life-giving reminder. It's really helping me to let go in a way that I would otherwise hold on when change comes to go. Let go, this is the way that I give a gift. Let go, this is the way that I give a gift.
That's really lovely to hear you say that. Oh, a lot's happening as I'm listening to you and letting this all sink in. And I'm feeling like, as you're saying, in the letting go is the giving of the gift. I also feel like the word commitment is coming too to me. Like, as we live, I'm wondering whether letting go becomes much more possible when we've truly committed to being here, in spite of the knowing what you're saying, which is that we're all dying. Like, I think there's one way that I could not fully do something or be in something or love because I know it's going to go. Like, I could hold back or something and protect myself. And then I wouldn't have to endure so much pain at the letting go. Like, listening to you say, I can feel the grief of when no one was four. You know, I feel like it throws me into the same reflection of, oh my gosh, things have gone. You know, all the preciousness of my younger, sweet family members being little babies is gone. Vespa being a newborn is gone. And it's not coming back. And if I can keep finding it in myself to commit fully to experiencing everything that's here without wanting it to go away, without wishing anything away, in service of saving myself from some kind of grief, which doesn't work anyway. So I may as well throw myself in and be vulnerable, really vulnerable to loving, to receiving my life. Maybe the letting go, it's like if I breathe in fully, maybe breathing out fully is more possible. Like instead of living my life like a shallow breath that goes and all that's associated with that, what if I could live with a very committed in breath and a very committed out breath and accept that we are this becoming? We are part of, it's like I can feel the undoing of all of the separation narrative as well with this writing, with this reflection, that we are like a big swirling process of unfolding, and each taking our small human part in something huge, something unfathomably huge to our smallness that we encounter ourselves as. And somehow the letting go feels more doable, feels more possible if I can really hand on heart say, but I'm really committing to this, what's here right now. I'm living now, I'm going to live now. And it relates to that we haven't got time to waste. I think there's commitment to being here that is born of not not taking things for granted so that I could just fritter it away or something. And so in my commitment, I can feel that I could let something go properly. Whereas if I was half-hearted, I would have to cling because I wouldn't have felt it as fully as it was intending to be felt. And therefore letting it go was harder because I haven't really fully experienced it. And if you haven't fully experienced it, I have to cling on a bit. So I'm just realizing this connection between commitment and letting go, which I haven't seen before, of fully being here. I can release my hands, like I can open my palms to let something out because I've really held it close and I've really experienced it and had the gifts. I've received the gifts of it, so I can then gift whatever it is to the future.
Such a powerful way to speak, Lizzie, this way that you're bringing in that commitment and letting go are kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
And I was struck as you were speaking by, you said it this way that really touched me about allowing yourself to receive your life. So I think seeing it that way is so illuminating because, like you said, when you can feel into, and this is what I'm feeling too, when you can feel into that we're part of a giant process that keeps on unfolding and everything is unfolding all the time, everything is changing all the time. That's such a different way of looking at our lives from the kind of fearful, the assumption that what we're meant to do is to keep our lives the same. I think is really strong in us. I certainly can feel it in me as you were talking about the shallow breath. I can feel a way that I can really easily brace against life. Brace against. I was looking back and, I said earlier that I had this glimpse of what it felt like to be 6. And then I had a glimpse the other day of what it felt like to be 14 or 15. And my whole bodily sensation and orientation to life was so different. I caught a little micro glimpse of it, like, that's what it was like. And I could feel the part of me that wanted to go, I should have held on to that. And that something bad was happening. And that leads me also down the path of sort of like holding my breath. I can feel it in my body and bracing against life. And you said this. So anyway, when you said receiving our lives, it struck me that once we start to see life as a process in the way that this piece points us into, our work is to participate in, but also to receive everything that comes from being in something that's unfolding, including ourselves. Can I receive myself as I change? Can I receive my life, or will I brace myself against it so as to be trying to be unaffected by it, so that I won't have to feel the terrible loss? Because it's terrible loss to lose that, but it's also extraordinary. It's also, as Bradley Artson says, it's also awesome. And I think he means it in the way of awe-filled, like. So what you did in the way that you spoke about it, Lizzie, that's really affecting me, is to say that what it takes is for us to commit to really let ourselves be here in our lives, which is the same as the commitment to treat time as if it were very brief and very precious, which means simultaneously stepping into our lives, sort of like seizing them, and also letting go so that our lives can really touch us. They're both the same move.
Yeah.
And I wondered, as you were speaking, whether part of the trouble that we get into is that we imagine that we ought to be way more powerful than we are, that part of our grief is, I can't seem to stop this, I can't seem to stop things changing, I ought to be able to. And that one of our definitions of power is something like, I won't get affected. If I were powerful, I wouldn't get affected by the losses, I wouldn't get affected by what happened. And so we try to be powerful in a way that we can't be, in order to, and that stops us receiving. And so the way I'm looping around was, I was really struck that the act of receiving is the same as the act of stepping into our lives. And that's a really extraordinary way of thinking about it.
And also what you were just saying brought me to the line about forgiveness as well. Like, if we are letting go, if we are part of this bigger process, if we are fully receiving our lives, the figures in our lives that feel difficult, the people, the events where there's something to forgive, in that moment of encountering this right now, I can feel my own like right sizing of those things in my heart, those people in my heart, of like, ah, yes, they are a brief and ephemeral flash of life too. Like, somehow, talking of power, I feel like it's possible for us to give other people power that has a hold over us. And in sometimes I think the word forgiveness, it feels like an interpersonal something, but in this context it feels like a letting go. It feels like so we're all in this unfolding process, we're all equally that, so it's possible that I can somehow reposition everything as process, rather than this person did this to me and now I'm really annoyed with them and that really hurt me. Somehow when I'm in this stream of conversation, those things feel a little bit kind of basic or trite or something, because actually it's much bigger than that. Because the contrast, the arguing, the annoyingness, the woundedness is kind of part of the grit of the process. And so I'm finding myself re-encountering this forgiveness word. And he says it ought to be easier to forgive each other. It's like in this stream, it is easier to forgive because there's something way more at stake than whether you did something nasty to me or not, which is receiving my life. Like, it feels like a very powerful something for me to shift into in the moment, which is, hold on a sec, this is my life, there's no time to be wasted. I want to be here. I commit to this moment and all of its fullness and all of its what it has on offer for me. So my gripes and my annoyances and my petty stuff and the things that I've got stored away for feeling bad about when I have a bad moment or something, they feel way less compelling, way less like they want my attention. And in a moment where those things really aren't there, like I'm walking along the beach or I'm playing or I'm cooking or going for a walk or working or writing, what if I'm fully there? And then those things get released in some way. So it's not like I have to turn towards those things and let them go, but by living my life, by being who I am, by receiving my life, I release those things, I let those things go. And maybe that's more of a kind of forgiveness than actually turning towards you and saying, Justin, I forgive you. Like, it's not that.
Mm.
It's not a direct transaction. It's when I live, when I fully encounter myself, my life, when I receive myself and all that this life has in this moment, everything else kind of gets let off the hook that doesn't that's not in service of that.
It's a great way to talk about forgiveness as a kind of letting go.
Mm.
And it struck me whilst you were talking about it, Lizzie, that, for example, if you and I had some kind of difficulty and I was feeling hurt, I'm really with you. To forgive might be simply to see that whatever it was is an ephemeral, momentary something, and to really just let it go. Like I can deal with being a bit hurt. Maybe that's
Yeah.
just fine.
Yeah.
Maybe even better would be to talk with you about it, to say that
Yeah.
really hurt. I'm really hurting. But the big move would be, I sort of got onto this whilst you were speaking. I saw earlier that our attempts to, what we do in attempting to not face all of the loss and the changes, we imagine that we should be sort of outside of time. We should be unaffected by things. I should be in charge here. And that we very easily imagine that somebody else is in charge in that way when we're not. So if I'm hurt by something you said, I can very easily get into this, to pick up his language, you are some all-powerful divinity who will outlast the ages, and now I have to, every time I see you, I have to hold this hurt all the time, and I have to think about it everywhere I go, because instead of going, oh yeah, you're a temporary flash of life just like I am, which is such a tender thing to realize, and so I might come and talk to you about, and we might learn together about what it is to be hurt and changing. But let me not either try to be like an all-powerful, everlasting divinity in your life because I'm hurt by something you said and I'm going to try and smash you. And let me not treat you like one who has some kind of magical power over me, even when, but simply just to receive one another. And that's what forgiveness is. It's the letting go. And it's also, you said, right sizing. It's getting everybody to the right size, which was we're all wonderful and vulnerable and changing and shifting and brief. And can we forgive one another from there and talk with one another honestly from there, not from this other distorted place?
Mm. And trust that the process of that is contributing to the bigger process too. Like what happens between you and I is part of how the whole of this, what does he call it, the biosphere is making itself, is erupting. It's like I'm thinking of lava. When lava flows out of a volcano, if you watch videos of it, I've never seen it like in real life, but the videos, it's like it unfolds out of itself into greater space. It takes up more space, like the beginning bit of this that you read, Justin. The infants and children refuse to do things the way they've always been done, bringing relentless energy. It's like we get out the way and something comes, both in terms of lineage and actual physical bodies and having children and new generations coming through, but also in our own self. It's the same process. Like, we shed something, we let something go, and something else gets born, like the larva producing itself. Like, there's something more that comes as we let go, more gets born. And so in relationship, when you and I forgive one another, another something gets born, another facet of our relationship. Like, if we could see ourselves as lava unfolding down the mountain, and who knows what that lava is going to look like once it's right at the bottom and in a pool, and what it will make and what kind of mountain it might create. But we have to let it flow in order to see what's going to get created out of this. And it just feels like we can have faith in the gift that we're giving by doing that, in the creation that's happening because we are allowing the process to unfold and interpreting it in a way that's full of gifts rather than something to run from or hide from. And actually, that's not really possible anyway, so we may as well just get with the program. Like, life is going to happen, isn't it? Whether we think we're holding back or we think we're trying, making it smaller or diminishing something, it will happen. It is happening.
Yeah. Such a great place for us to end, Lizzie, with this observation that you make, that life is going to do this unfolding like the lava breaking out of itself, whether we fight it or not. And so trusting, for example, if we're in difficulty, trusting that our moves to address the difficulty are part of our own unfolding that we might try to resist. Unfolding such a great image, which I'm really enjoying, unfolding out of ourselves, like bursting a new, because I come and talk to you, a new something in me and in you and between us bursts out. Who knows what it's going to be?
Yeah.
Because we took the trouble to say how I felt, how you felt, what happened. And there's an invitation at the end of the first paragraph of this that we could, I think, is such a great invitation, which is, he says, life anyway is splashing towards greater diversity, experience, relationship, and connection. So we could do our best to fight that, or we could say, okay, something new, some new possibility, some new relationship, some new experience, some new kind of connection will come from our committing to keep on letting go and receiving our lives, but also stepping into our lives in this way that we've been talking about with forgiveness. So
Yeah.
stuff is happening anyway. Can we participate in it? Or will we, because we imagine that we should be unaffected by life, will we keep on trying to fight it with all of the difficulty that comes with that? Well, I'm so glad to have spoken about this with you, Lizzie.
Me too.
And we should end here for today. And I want to say thank you to you and thank you to everyone for being with us. And all being well, we will be back for our 150th week next Sunday morning.
Amazing.
See you then.
Bye.
Bye.